We're gonna flip you over to your side, and you can either use your ball, or because I know more people are gonna have a foam roller than are going to have a ball at home, I'll use a foam roller. So I'm gonna put the foam roller, for me, I'm just gonna put it underneath my calf. You can play with where the roller is in terms of how close it is to you or how close it is to your foot. I'm gonna take a yoga block and I'm just gonna place it underneath my head just for a little bit of head support here. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna set up with our foot directly below our hip. So I don't want you in hip flexion, and to exaggerate, I don't want you way up here. I don't want you way back here in hip extension. I want you somewhere in neutral land, or kind of such that your heel, your knee, your hip, your shoulder are all in line. And then the other leg, you can just bring it up in front of you and just get it out of the way. Now, once again, I like to take that hand, find that soft spot between your pelvis and your ribs, go down till you find the very top of your pelvis, and monitor that for me. So what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna try and make that bone drop away from me as I roll the roller away from me as well. And in doing so, again, I'm lengthening my abdominal wall on this side as much as I can. I'm reaching my right leg away from me as much as I possibly can. And by doing so, I've created a gap between the floor and the left side of my ribs, or I'm doing a little bit of a side plank on this left side now. So there's a space there. In contrast, when I hike my pelvis up on the right side and I draw my foot and that roller towards me, then my left abdominal wall finds the floor, my right abdominal wall shortens, and now I've really reduced the space between my ribs and my pelvis. Then again, I'm just gonna roll that roller away as far as I can, lengthen as much as I can up top here, see how much length I can create there. I'm gonna find that gap on the bottom again, and then I'm gonna bring it back up. Pelvis comes back up towards my ribs, right leg gets a little shorter, rolls the roller towards me, left abs find the floor. Give me one more of those, then we're gonna add one little bit, and this is gonna be a bit of a self-assessment for you, but also a bit of a challenge for you. So you're gonna roll that away, find that lengthened state, bring it back up, find that shortened state. Make sure you're not again drifting to spine extension or spine flexion. Stay somewhere in the middle for me. Now on this next one, what you're gonna do is you're gonna roll that roller away as far as you possibly can. Make your right leg as long as you can. Left abs are really gonna lift off the floor here. Now do not let that pelvis bone move. If you want, you can even take your index and middle finger, place it on the sharp bone in the front of your pelvis as you monitor the top of your pelvis. Do not let those bones move. Keep your toes pointed straight ahead and slowly show me how high you can lift your leg in the air before those bones start to come up towards your ribs. You should feel a ton of glute if you do that well. Don't let your leg drift forward. Keep it in line with your hip, and then place it back down. Bring your pelvis back up. So you're checking, okay, if I roll my leg away from me, I lengthen all this abdominal wall stuff, I drop that pelvis down, can I now here stabilize my pelvis and just move my femur on my pelvis without my pelvis moving? Because a lot of people don't realize when they abduct their hip, or they think they're abducting their hip or lifting their leg up, they're actually just hiking their pelvis towards their ribs, and they're drawing a lot of that from their lumbar spine. I want you to really get good at dissociating those two things. So maintain that length between your pelvis and your ribs and go, okay, can I maintain all of that space I just created there, not let this bone hike up, and then can I lift that leg up, keeping my knee straight, keeping my leg in line with my hip, keeping my toes pointed straight ahead, and can I hold that, and then can I parachute back down, all without my pelvis moving. Like I said, you should notice a ton of lateral hip. Now we're gonna do one more of those, and if you really struggle with this, I recommend and I encourage you to hit pause and give me like 5 to 10 of these, okay? Same thing, don't let that pelvis move. Maintain that space between your left abs and the ground or the floor there. You're gonna float that leg up, see how high it'll go, hold. Then you're gonna parachute back down, and you're gonna come back up, and then we're gonna check the same thing and do the same movements over on the other side. For a lot of people, they notice a bit of a difference on side to side, so that's one of the things that you're looking for here. Just because you're really good at it on one side does not necessarily mean that you're gonna be really good at this on the other side. So always, always check both. So I'm gonna place that roller underneath my calf. I'm gonna put my head on the block here. I'm gonna get my right leg out of the way now. And then we're gonna find that gap between our ribs and our pelvis. We're gonna put our hand or move our hand down until we find the top of that pelvis. We're gonna keep it there. And then you're gonna see how far you can roll the roller away from you, noticing that your right abs are gonna leave the floor in doing so. And then we're just gonna go through straight side flexion from here, coming all the way back up. Now, one of the other variables that you can play with in this movement, especially if you find this movement tricky for you, is just like we did on the floor in the first one, how I had you do this just in your kind of neutral low back position. You can then try it with your pelvis tucked. You can then try it with your pelvis dumped forward or an anterior pelvic tilt. You should actually be able to go through lateral flexion of your pelvis in all of those different positions. It's not that you should only be working one angle, but again, just for sake of time and just teaching you guys about the movement itself, I'm just gonna have you guys do this one in kind of a neutral-ish position, but feel free to explore that and see, okay, am I really limited in one motion? For a lot of people, it's gonna be maintaining a slight posterior tilt. A lot of people with our low backs being biased towards lumbar extension will find it very easy to drift into extension when going through these motions, but harder to stay neutral or harder to stay slightly tucked through the pelvis. See what you find for yourself. Now we're gonna test that same movement here. So we're gonna come up as high as we can one more time, closing off that gap between the top of our pelvis and our ribs. Then reaching that leg as long as we possibly can, lengthening the distance between our pelvis and our ribs as much as we can, noticing the gap between your right abs and the floor. And then again, if you want to take your index finger, your middle finger, place it on the front of your pelvis. Do not let that bone move. Keep those toes pointed straight ahead and check, okay, without losing any of that length in my left abdominal wall and without letting that left pelvis bone move, can I slowly abduct my hip, hold, and then parachute back down. And then we're gonna come back up. Now for me, I notice a big difference here. This is much harder on my left side, especially today, because I just did martial arts and we did a lot of left kicks today, and left body kicks, and that's my difficult side. So that's the side I struggle with, so we hammered those today. And one of the reasons that that kick on that side is harder for me is because I have a little less abduction on this hip than I do on the right side. So I've got lots of freedom of movement on the right side. I've got some resistance on this side. See what you find with yourself. Maintain that abdominal wall length. Do not let that pelvis move. Keep it stable and see if you can keep it stable. Toes straight ahead. Don't let that leg drift forward on me. Just straight abduction, hold, parachute back down, bring it back up, close the gap between your pelvis and your rib cage, open it back up again, maintain that length, slowly float that leg up into abduction, hold, parachute back down, bring it back up. Give me one more, but once again, if this is fairly limited for you, give me a good 5 or 10 of these. Hit pause. Let's do this last one here together though. Maintain every bit of length that you can. Float that leg up. Hold, 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 hold. And parachute back down and bring it back up.